The lore of Path of Exile is known for its complexity, often making it daunting for newcomers to dive into, and that reputation is well earned. Fully exploring the world would take hundreds of hours. However, the sequel, Path of Exile 2, takes a more streamlined approach, offering a focused storyline. It still branches into the elements that make the Path of Exile universe, captivating, but it does so in a way that's more approachable and easier to digest. That was my experience, and this is why I'm gonna make this video. This video is your introduction to the story of Path of Exile 2, and also Path of Exile in general, but I'll keep things straightforward and beginner-friendly, focusing only on the essential details you need to understand, the storyline. In the future, I might create more in-depth videos exploring specific parts of the lore, but for now, let's just dive right into the story. Thank you to Nimorga and Kazad for their help in fact-checking my writing. Now, the story of Path of Exile 2 starts 20 years after the events of Path of Exile 1, but in order to fully appreciate what's happening in Path of Exile 2, I'm gonna have to go back a bit. Back to a time in Rayclast where clans of warrior poets called the Ezomytes reached the shores of a region called Faril. Faril became a sanctuary for the Ezomyte clans many centuries ago. These clans hold a deep connection to the land and its primal forces. They revere the First Ones, animalistic gods tied to the natural world. This sanctuary is shattered when the Eternal Empire, a powerful force, turns its gaze to Faril. The Empire's conquest is swift and devastating. Ezomyte villages are razed, burned down, their sacred sites are desecrated. The Empire establishes its dominance not only through military might, but also by replacing Ezomyte traditions with their own, leaving scars that run deep through generations. The Ezomytes do not remain subjugated, though. Over time, the clans, initially fragmented and wary of each other, unite against their common oppressor. This alliance culminates in the Red Vale, a desolate battleground soaked in the blood of countless wars. Here, in this vale, the Ezomytes stage their final rebellion in Faril. The victory they achieve is bittersweet. While they drive the eternal forces back, the cost is immense. Entire generations are lost, and the land itself seems to mourn the toll. Following the rebellion, the Ezomytes seek stability and create the role of Count. This leader, chosen to represent the unity, basically, of the clans, carries the ceremonial sword Agnar. The blade is an ancient artifact imbued with Ezomyte tradition and ruins. It becomes a symbol of the shared history and resilience of this land. With the establishment of Ogham as the central settlement of Faril, the Ezomytes rebuild slowly. The position of Count, established to bring unity, becomes a central figure in Faril. By the year 1619, Count Geonor holds this title. He presides over Ogham and the surrounding lands. Now, he is born into the role, inheriting the ceremonial sword Agnar and the responsibility it represents. Geonor's leadership begins with a hope. Under his rule, the Ezomyte clans experience a period of relative stability. Now, it might not be because of the Count by itself. There was 20 years of stability, but regardless, he was in place during the stability. This sense of stability begins to shift with the arrival of Oriana. This is the Countess. Originally from the Vastiri desert, she becomes Geonor's wife. Her arrival is a cause for celebration in the manor, but the joy is short-lived. Soon after their marriage, Oriana's influence over Geonor grows, altering his demeanor. What is going on here? She speaks of ancient wrongs and hidden truth, whispering doubts into the mind of the Count about his ancestry and the purity of his bloodline. These whispers awaken an obsession in Geonor, driving him to seek validation through power and legacy. Oriana's manipulation is subtle but effective. She introduces the idea of a hidden artifact, the seed of corruption. It's said to hold immense power. This artifact is rumored to lie within the depth of the Grelwood, not too far from the town. The Grelwood is an ancient forest steeped in legend. Oriana convinces Geonor that possessing this artifact will secure his position and erase any doubts about his worthiness. So what we're seeing here is the fact that Geonor inherited his position, and I'm guessing, well, we have to guess here that he was probably feeling a bit misplaced. He was probably worried that people didn't see him as worthy because he didn't earn this position. It was given to him. So this was probably one of his biggest fears, the idea that he wasn't worthy of the position. And Oriana knew this. Count Geonor's obsession with the seed grows unchecked. Against the advice of his council, he orders a covert expedition into the Grelwood. The forest's ancient trees bear witness to countless myths, some of which speak of entities guarding secrets hidden within the depths of the forest. For Geonor, these warnings are insignificant in the face of his ambition. Under the cover of darkness, Geonor departs with a small group of guards and hired mercenaries. As they push deeper, it becomes clear that they are not alone. At the heart of the forest, the group discovers the Hooded One, a figure whose presence radiates of old power. Geonor's mercenaries confront this guardian, or more precisely, are confronted by the guardian. They see him, of course, as an obstacle to the seed. A battle ensues, one by one, claiming the life of Geonor's companions. In the end, it is Agnar, the ceremonial sword passed down through generations, that allows Geonor to overpower the Hooded One. Using the sword's runic power, he binds the guardian's soul to the Tree of Souls, leaving him trapped in a state of torment. Now, this ancient and imposing structure is tied to both Ezomyte rituals and darker chapters of their history. Long ago, it served as a site of communion with the Fae. But during the Eternal Empire's occupation, it was corrupted into a place of suffering. Here, countless Ezomytes were tortured and left to die as a grim warning to those who resisted the Eternal Empire's occupation. The Hooded One leaves him with a warning that humanity isn't ready for whatever he is thinking of unleashing with the seed. With the Hooded One incapacitated, Geonor takes the seed of corruption. The artifact is not a simple object, but a living entity, pulsating with an otherworldly energy. Its presence is unsettling, even to Geonor, but he sees it as a necessary tool to secure his legacy. He returns to Ogham triumphant, but his victory marks the beginning of a descent into madness. The seed's influence spreads insidiously, fueling Geonor's paranoia and amplifying the darkness within him. The people of Ogham sense a change in their count, but the full extent of what transpired in the Grelwood remains unknown to them. So this whole chapter of writing here, it's about the fact that Geonor goes to get this seed, is of course confronted by the Hooded One, and the Hooded One, we don't know who he is right now, but I think it's fair to put a guess here that he is a being of extreme power from olden times. Now, I have a few suspicions in my head after playing Path of Exile, but if you haven't played the first one, this is irrelevant for now. Keep going. We also see that the seed, as I said, is something that is living. Geonor feeds it immediately the blood of an innocent guard, an innocent mercenary, and immediately it reacts to the blood. It feeds on it and it becomes more powerful. This is something that we're going to see throughout Act 1. As Count Geonor's return to Ogham spreads unease, the repercussions of his actions in the Grelwood ripple through Ogham. His decrees grow increasingly harsh. Those without clan ties, already marginalized, become targets for forced labor. The Count orders excavations beneath his manor, forcing men, women, and children to dig until they cannot continue, and then feeding their bodies to the seed of corruption, or as some call it, the beast. Yes, this is the same beast as in Path of Exile 1 for you returning players. The people of Ogham begin to suffer under these new laws. Small offenses are met with extreme punishment, and the Count's paranoia drives him to see disloyalty in every corner. Entire families are displaced, Homes are burned, and whispers of rebellion rise among the clans. In the chaos, some manage to escape the Count's grasp, fleeing into the wilderness with little more than their lives, leaving behind them everything. A modest logging camp called Clearfell in the southern reaches of Farrell becomes a haven for these refugees. Hidden amongst the dense trees and far from Geonor's reach, the camp grows into a fragile community. Amongst its residents are Renly, an Ezomyte blacksmith who brings his knowledge of forging and leadership to the group, Una, a young woman from a prominent clan who provides guidance and hope through her singing, but also through her use of old Ezomyte magic, and Finn, a resourceful drifter with a knack for survival. Each of them carries their own scars from the Count's tyranny, and this is where your story starts. You've been captured by the Count and condemned to hang for your crimes against him. Not that the Count's judgment can be trusted anymore. Thanks to some miracle, you escape execution and flee through the night, eventually reaching the Clearfell camp. Exhausted, you find yourself thrust into a community on the brink of survival. The refugees, though wary, recognize in you a potential ally against the spreading corruption. Now, something that's quite interesting here is that based on who you pick as your starting character, your story might be a little different. For example, the warrior is actually an orphan that was adopted by Renly, and you will have specific dialogue based on that. Let's keep going. Una tells you that understanding the events that happened in the Grelwood is crucial to combating the spreading corruption. At this point, your character doesn't know what you know, what happened, what transpired in the Grelwood. Una emphasizes the importance of uncovering the truth about Count Geonor's actions. She has a suspicion that something is afoot, a corruption is in place. You venture into the Grelwood, guided by stories of its history, and eventually find the Tree of Souls and the hooded figure hanging from the tree. Now, closer examination reveals signs of the struggle that took place. Scorched earth, scattered weapons, and faint traces of magic hint at the confrontation between Geonor and the Hooded One. Now, thanks to Una and Renly's help, you manage to break the binding on the tree and set the Hooded One free once more. The Hooded One collapses from the tree, his body weakened but alive. The binding that once tethered him dissipates slightly, though its presence still lingers in the air. Although freed, the binding still holds strong, and in order to fully break it, you make your way to the Cemetery of the Eternals, where, after quite a few fights, you find a Ring of Authority, which is a ring that the Counts used to use, and you are able to use it to completely free the Hooded One. Now, despite his frailty, he begins to recount what happened. Count Geonor's obsession with the seed of corruption, the confrontation at the tree, and the terrible consequences of removing such a powerful artifact. The corruption seeps out into Rayclast once more. The Hooded One also explained that the seed's influence is not confined to Geonor. Its corruption seeps into the land and minds of those near it, spreading madness in despair. This explains why the people closer to Geonor are usually filled with corruption, even physical corruption. These are the guards that you eventually will fight. Geonor's actions, driven by Aureliana's manipulations, have set a chain of events in motion that could consume Farrell entirely, if not the world of Rayclast itself. And of course, it's up to us to stop it. The Hooded One urges you to act quickly. He is too weak to undo the damage itself, but he offers guidance on what must be done next. The seed of corruption must be contained, its influence stopped before it spreads further. The corruption must be confronted at its sources. Geonor and the seed must be stopped, and to do so means going back to the city of Ogham. As you approach Ogham, the landscape bears the scars of Geonor's tyranny. Homes are burnt, and fields stand as a grim reminder of the Count's decrees. The closer you get to the town, the more the corruption manifests physically. Twisted plants, unnatural growth, and pool of dark liquid dot the landscape, creating quite an eerie atmosphere. Now, entering Ogham, you are met with a hostility. Of course, the Count's mercenaries, corrupted mercenaries, patrol the streets. They enforce the laws of the Count, targeting anyone they suspect of disloyalty. You are forced to confront them in brutal skirmishes, clearing the way to the manor. And boy, did I die quite a few times on my way to the town. Pushing further into the town, you find Leitis, a survivor of Geonor's court, and thanks to you, she survives the executioner's axe. Her husband, unfortunately, wasn't so lucky. Now, she provides insight into the Count's actions in the manor as she used to live there. She reveals the manipulations of Oriana and what's really transpired behind closed doors. You eventually fight your way to the entrance of the manor, ready to confront the Count. Inside the manor, you have to slowly descend deeper and deeper, fighting your way through hordes of corrupted soldiers. The closer you are to the seed, the more physically bloated and corrupted your enemies are. So this represents the idea that the closer you are to the seed, the worse it gets. Eventually, you reach the base of the manor and you find the pit Leitis described. It's cavernous, it's a gaping hole dug deep into the earth. The air is thick with decay and the remains of those sacrificed to the seed of corruption. I say sacrificed, but I should really say fed to the beast. The beast has now grown massive with tentacles, its tendrils spreading outwards, searching for food and feeding on the death and despair around it. This is where you find Count Geonor and Countess Oriana surveying the pit. Now, the confrontation with the Count begins without hesitation. Geonor, consumed by his obsession, views you as an obstacle to his twisted vision for Ogham, and really for the world. Oriana spurs him on, promising him power once he's killed you. The battle is fierce, to put it mildly. I think it took me about 16 tries to kill him. Geonor wields both the might of the sword, Angnar, and the corruption of the seed. Despite his power, Geonor's madness is his weakness. His attacks grow more erratic as the fight continues, and in a final desperate act, Geonor calls upon Oriana for help. But seeing that he won't survive this confrontation, she reveals her true face and leaves him for dead, taking the seed with her in the process. Geonor then converts into a monstrous wolf, fully consumed by the corruption. Indeed, he was just a piece of the puzzle, a pawn in Oriana's grand scheme, which we don't know currently. In the end, you deliver the final blow, bringing Geonor's monstrous form to the ground. The Hooded One appears and confirms that Geonor's death has broken the seed's immediate hold on the land. With Geonor gone, the Hooded One takes a moment to reflect on what has been lost. He warns that the seed, though weakened, remains a threat as long as it exists. Oriana, having fled with her plans intact, must be pursued before the corruption spreads further. The path forward lies in the plains of Astiri, where the Countess's next move will undoubtedly sow more destruction. Though Geonor's tyranny has ended, the battle against the corruption is far from over. The Ezomyte's hope now lies in preventing the seeds from finding new soil to infect, and your path leads you to follow Oriana to the desert plains of Astiri. Now, before we get to the conclusion, I thought it was interesting when the Hooded One clears the corruption from the body of Geonor, the Count, and he says, "Please bring me vengeance." He says, go get Oriana and stop this madness. Clearly, he was a good-intentioned Count that unfortunately had cracks in his soul. And there you have the story of the first act of Path of Exile 2. I hope you liked it. In the end, Oriana was truly the villain in this story. Count Geonor was guilty of feeling inadequate in his position as Count. His biggest fear was that the other people would see him as he saw himself, unqualified. Oriana saw the crack and took advantage of it in order to get to the seed. It's also interesting to think about the fact that the Hooded One mentions early on that he has been moving around Rayclast with the seed for 20 years, going from place to place, always something chasing him away, which means something wanted him and the seed in for real. Well, that's what I think anyway. Who is the Hooded One? I'm sure we are about to find out. Now it's time for me to finally move on, play Act 2, and tell you all about its story. Anyway, that's enough for today. Thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you in the next one.